prosecution to support that. If the jury comes back and acquits, the judge is off the hook. If the jury comes back and says hung jury, the judge could theoretically declare a mistrial. That would have the same impact as a hung jury unless he did so with prejudice, which means that they can't refile the case. If they come back guilty, he could still declare a mistrial or a mistrial with prejudice based on what is going on. So there's a long way to go in this trial, even once the jury comes back. And Andy McCarthy is fairly critical about Schrader.
Oh.
For as long as needed. It really is it's a cool piece of technology. It was originally developed over 20 years ago in hospitals to relieve nausea from patients. Now Relief Band is available to the masses. Relief Band stimulates a nerve in the wrist. It travels to the part of the brain that controls nausea. Then it blocks the signal your brain is sending to your stomach telling you that you're sick. And now Relief Band has released its newest model, Relief Band Sport. The Sport is waterproof, features interchangeable bands, and has extended battery life as well. I got one for my sister because my sister was having some morning sickness, and Relief Band helped her out. It can help you out as well. As the holiday season quickly approaches, there's never been a better time to give the gift of relief. Make sure your loved ones are nausea-free. Right now, Relief Band is running their biggest sale of the year. If you head to reliefband.com, you'll receive 25% off all orders. You don't even need a promo code. Don't miss out on this deal. That's RELIEFBAND.com. Receive 25% off all orders through November 28th. Alrighty, so one thing has become eminently clear on the left side of the aisle, and that is that they are panicked about 2024. The reason they're panicked about 2024 is because Joe Biden made the idiotic decision to pick as his vice president not somebody who was a plausible 2024 candidate, but somebody who had completely flamed out as an early candidate in 2020, Kamala Harris, who didn't even last through the California primary. She didn't even get to her home state, despite being the early leader in the presidential race. She had all of the benefits of intersectionality. She was a senator from California. She had shellacked Joe Biden in the first debate by suggesting that he was a racist, and then later in the race suggested that he was a sexual assaulter. And then she dropped out of the race because she's terrible at everything. Because all she has done for her entire career is fail up. Democrats are so disquieted with her that CNN reported the other day they were talking about elevating her to the Supreme Court just to get her out of the way.
Time to kick this off.
That would be the greatest case of failing upward in American history. You go from being a crappy AG, to being a crappy senator, to being a crappy vice president, to being a crappy Supreme Court justice. Really, America is the land of opportunity. Okay, well, Kamala Harris did another national interview yesterday, and they all go badly. George Stephanopoulos. I will never, ever, ever get over the fact that George Stephanopoulos is presented as a news person. I will never get over it. As an objective news person. This guy was an advisor to Hillary and Bill Clinton. Again,
Battle Royale.
Karl Rove were presented as an objective news reporter.
Closing in.
That is the equivalent to making George Stephanopoulos an objective news source. The media bias is
Enemy
so
soldier
rife.
incoming.
Kamala Harris can't even sound good when speaking with George Stephanopoulos, whose job it is to carry around a drool cup for her. It's insane. So here is Kamala Harris explaining that you can't fix the border.
8 months ago, the president gave the job of addressing root causes of migration. But last month, we learned that in the past year, had the highest number of illegal border crossings since they started to be recorded in 1960. What are you doing to turn that around? How long will it take?
Well, it's not going to be overnight. We can't just flip a switch and make it better. The reality is that we inherited a system, an immigration system that was deeply broken. And it's requiring us to actually put it back together in terms of creating a fair process that is effective and efficient.
Okay, yeah, we can't fix it. Is really not a good answer, considering this was delegated to you. This was your job. Joe Biden sent you down, not to the border, to the Latin American, Central American triangle, to try and solve this thing. You've done nothing. And then you said that you had visited the border when you had not visited the border. And then you said you don't understand why you should visit the border. And you're almost laughing. We can tell. You're almost laughing. Nervous, bizarre cackle that breaks out every time Kamala Harris is asked a question. She's almost there in every one of these questions.
Lads,
These are
let's
not
get it done.
super tough questions. Okay, George Stephanopoulos then asked her a softball. Does she feel underused as Vice President of the United States? And here is her inspiring answer.
We're getting things done, and we're doing it together.
So you don't feel misused or underused?
No. I am very, very excited about the work that we have accomplished, but I am also absolutely clear-eyed that there is a lot more to do, and we're going to get it done.
Yeah.
Move to the next area
And
and secure the
then
perimeter.
she said she wanted to bring down the cost of living. This worked out well for her boss. Joe Biden, you'll remember, last year suggested he was going to get down the cost of living. Since then, the price of a Thanksgiving dinner has exploded about 20%. Here is Kamala Harris.
The cost of groceries has gone up. The cost of gas has gone up. And as this is all happening in the context of 2 years of a pandemic, it's one of the highest priorities actually for the president and for me. And so we're dealing with this issue in a number of ways. Short term, one of the issues is the supply chain. We're seeing a bottleneck and we need to relieve that bottleneck. So we brought together everyone from the Teamsters to Target to say, hey, let's all bring everyone together, from the truckers to the folks who are moving product, and let's open up some of our major ports for work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay, so this is not going down for Kamala Harris. It's not going well. And the Democrats are looking forward to 2024. And the other person they keep trotting out there is Pete Buttigieg. Good luck with that. Like, really, the American people are definitely going to embrace the guy who went missing on the job for 2 months because he was on paternity leave. Despite the fact that, again, paternity leave was originally designed so that you can help care for a person who just experienced physical trauma, namely your wife. Pete Buttigieg took a 2-month paternity leave in the middle of a supply chain crisis, and no one noticed. And then he came back and bragged about how he was a wonderful person for having taken 2 months of paternity leave on the public dime. So, yeah, good luck. Really, good luck. The intersectional firefight between the LGBT wing of the Democratic Party and the people of color wing of the Democratic Party is going to be a wonder to watch.
Got gas moving
But,
in.
says Politico, there is one person who's being forgotten in all of this mathematical calculation about who ought to be the 2024 Democratic nominee. We'll get to that in just one moment. First, let's talk about the fact that you need a great pair of wireless earbuds, right? You just use your earbuds all the time. Whether you are running on a treadmill, or whether you're just walking around the city listening to music, or whether you're on a phone call, you need a great pair of wireless earbuds. But those other wireless earbuds, they're really, really expensive. Not so with Raycons. Raycons are great. With seamless Bluetooth pairing, a comfortable noise isolating fit, you can start listening right away and keep listening for hours. The audio quality is amazing, comparable to what you get from other premium brands, except Raycons start at about half the price. The new everyday earbuds come with 3 new sound profiles to make sure everything you're listening to sounds its best with just the right amount of bass. They've got pure mode for podcast listening, balanced mode for rock, they've got bass mode for hip-hop. Raycons offer 8 hours of playtime, a 32-hour battery life. There's also a built-in mic. You can take calls on your earbuds at the press of a button. They're convenient, they have great battery life, and they're not going to cost you an arm and a leg. Go to buyraycon.com/Ben today to unlock exclusive deals up to 20% off your Raycon order. Hurry, this offer is available for a limited time only. You don't want to miss it. That's buyraycon.com/Ben to unlock up to 20% off your Raycon, BUYRAYCON.com/Ben. Alrighty, so here is Politico speculating about what ought to happen in 2024. Quote, amid the glut of speculation about whether Kamala Harris or Pete Buttigieg is Joe Biden's political heir, another important succession story in Democratic circles has gone almost entirely undiscussed. Who will inherit Bernie Sanders' ideological mantle? During the past 2 presidential cycles,
Enemy
the Vermont
UAV
Independent mounted
overhead.
captivating, extremely well-financed bids. He lost twice, but he reshaped the Democratic Party. The size and contents of Biden's domestic agenda have been directly affected by Sanderism. He has compelled Democrats to embrace government's intervention rather than hide their faith in it from public view. But Sanders, like Biden, is old. No one in his orbit imagines him mounting a 3rd run should Biden call it quits. Something, to be clear, the president and his team have explicitly said he isn't doing. This is left a void in the party's left wing. and it is causing anxiety among progressive operatives who believe Sanders' great discovery was that in the era of online politics, a presidential campaign was an effective tool to push unapologetic liberalism. And this is true, by the way, for a huge number of members of the government, is that they are basically Instagram influencers. They're not in the business of drawing compromise deals and trying to figure out good policy. They're Instagram influencers. And they're out there to try and get the clicks, to try and get the likes, and try and get the attention on their little videos. Because many of them make a lot of money after leaving office based on the sort of following that they have built while they were in office. I've said for a long time, I have a pretty easy job. Right? My job is to tell you what I think on a daily basis, and I can be as honest about it as I want to be, which is purely honest about how I feel about all of these issues. Politicians don't have that job. Politicians have to sort of smooth the sharp edges. Politicians have to make deals that may stray from principle in order to get things done. And I think that's an important thing, right? It's an important job. But politicians who masquerade as principled people who are just about principle, they can do really well in the principled space. This is why Bernie Sanders has great popularity despite never having done anything of use his entire life and being an old communist leech on the public dollar. Okay, well, the question on the Democratic side of the aisle is this. If you've got Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg and they're running against each other, and neither one of them have the sort of soft-spoken, he's a dead person appeal that Joe Biden had in 2020, right? His appeal was he wasn't Bernie. His appeal was he was kind of just a thing who was there and not all that threatening. Well, Pete Buttigieg is pretty threatening. That dude says crazy stuff all the time. When Pete Buttigieg first declared for the presidency, he seemed like kind of an interesting candidate, specifically because he wasn't spitting on people from middle America. Then, within 5 minutes, he started treating himself like Pastor Pete and explaining that everybody who believed in the Bible in traditional ways was actually a brutal gay hater, and that if you interpreted the Bible properly, you should just be a pro-gay marriage socialist, essentially. And that was Pete Buttigieg's new pitch. Didn't go over great. And then it went over great with the Democratic base. Didn't go over great with anybody else. He has no appeal with the black population in the Democratic Party. Kamala Harris has no appeal with anyone. That was a pretty wide opening. Actually, there's a wide opening. Here's the dirty secret. There's a wide opening in the so-called moderate wing of the Democratic Party, and there's a huge opening on the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And the question is, which one of those wings actually pushes forward in the next primary cycle? So, in the Sanders wing, Politico says, ask veterans of Sanders' world who they think could fill that lane. And you get a host of recognizable but not necessarily national names. The most common are a band of House progressives like Pramila Jayapal from Washington, or Ro Khanna of California, or Katie Porter of California, or members of the Squad. I think the next chapter is Bernie 2.0 in color, says Chuck Rocha, a former union organizer who served as Sanders' senior campaign advisor. The next Sanders, as Rocha sees it, will follow the path laid out by one of Bernie's major influences, Jesse Jackson, whose Rainbow Coalition presidential campaigns in 1984 and 1988 fused worker rights and multiculturalism into a potent political force. Jackson had his missteps, including one fairly infamous one, and they link to the story. That would be the one where he called New York Hymie-town, because Jesse Jackson is a vicious terrorist. But the Democratic Party also went into abject panic at the prospect of him winning. Rocha thinks the party's in a new place now, having seen obvious slippage with white working class and Hispanic voters. He surmises that politicians like Ruben Gallego of Arizona, or Annette Barragan of California, or Austin Council City member Greg Casar, a self-avowed Democratic socialist, are the clearest embodiments of the Jackson vision. But, yeah, nobody's ever heard of these people. So then they say, what about Elizabeth Warren? Well, Elizabeth Warren is old. She flamed out. Her best shot was actually in 2016 when she didn't take the shot. There's one other name. Politico floats it. Still, there is one lawmaker who Rocha and several others have said did have the ideological makeup and infrastructure already in place, and the Sanders connection to boot. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Democrat of New York, who turns 35, the legal age to be president under the Constitution, on October 13th, 2024. Bernie's no different than when he was a crazy white-haired congressman, says Rocha. What legitimized him was when he could raise tens of millions of dollars. That made him real to every power broker in America, and no one beyond AOC has been able to do that. So get ready for the AOC 2024 presidential run. I don't think this is fantasy. I really don't. Because here's the thing. What is AOC's trajectory? She's a congresswoman from a heavily blue district in New York. She's not going to win statewide office. In order to be a senator in New York, you have to at least pose as a non-democratic socialist. But you do. Chuck Schumer has played this sort of inside-outside progressive game for a very, very long time. Kirsten Gillibrand, when she first ran for the Senate in New York, ran as a gun-toting, pro-Second Amendment, quasi-pro-life person, and then she shifted to the left. AOC...
Moving.
She's not just a progressive, she's a wild-eyed progressive. She says crazy crap on a regular basis. She drove Amazon out of her city. And she has a record that is just terrible in her home state. So her home district may like her because, again, it is a very, very blue district. But the rest of the state, there's upstate New York you got to worry about. Like, AOC is not going to be the governor of New York. She's not going to be a senator from New York. She could theoretically, you know, run for mayor of New York, but Bill de Blasio just flamed out, trying the same routine that AOC would push, to Eric Adams. So what is her trajectory? And the answer is, if you're AOC, why the hell not run for president? Really, why not? The media already love you. The media already slavishly pretend that you're an intelligent human being with something interesting to say, even though you have fewer than 10 brain cells to rub together. You're camera-friendly, obviously. So why wouldn't you run? And why not consolidate the Democratic Party around you? After all, you've got that intersectional coalition running for you. You're a woman of color who solidifies that Democratic Party progressive base, and you're attacked a lot by the right, which means, according to Democrats, that you are inherently good. Which moderate's going to stand up to that? You think Kamala Harris defeats AOC in a presidential primary? I have some fairly serious doubts about that. It's going to be fascinating to watch as this war goes on in the Democratic Party, and I'm here for it. They built her up, and now they're going to have to own it. Enjoy. Embrace the suck, guys. It's going to be really bad in 2024 for the Democrats. Alrighty, in just 1 second, we will get to the Democrats and Build Back Better. They voted on that this morning, cramming through a progressive-laden garbage bill that is going to damage half their Congress people. We'll get to that in one moment first. Now, struggling to watch Joe Biden push a sentence out of his face. Now, that's difficult. It's probably even more difficult trying to figure out what in the hell he is saying if you don't have a hearing aid. That's why you need to check out MD Hearing Aid. MD Hearing Aid is an FDA-registered rechargeable hearing aid. It costs a fraction of what typical hearing aids cost. The average price of a hearing aid in America is over $2,400 a pair, but their Volt Plus model is just $299.99 each when you buy a pair. MD Hearing Aid was founded by an ENT surgeon who saw how many of his patients needed hearing aids but couldn't afford them. He made it his mission to develop a quality hearing aid that anyone could afford. Their sleek design fits so well, no one will even know when you're wearing it. It's rechargeable with battery life that lasts up to 30 hours. And if you forget to take your hearing aids off in the shower, you don't have to worry because the Volt Plus is water resistant in up to 3 feet of water. You don't even need a prescription or a doctor's appointment. You buy it directly from them with audiologists and licensed hearing specialists available 7 days a week. So, how do they make these hearing aids so affordable? Since about 95% of people who need a hearing aid only require a few settings, MD Hearing Aids simplified the need for certain components not needed by most people. Plus, they cut out the price hiking middle. Jay says he's worked around F-4 fighter jets for many years in the Navy. He thought he'd never hear again like this. He put that Volt Plus in. He could actually hear the leaves crackling under his feet. It's time to reclaim your life from hearing loss. Go to mdhearingaid.com. Use promo code Shapiro to get their buy one, get one, $299.99 each offer. Plus, they're adding a free extra charging case of $100 value just for listeners of The Ben Shapiro Show. Head on over to mdhearingaid.com, use our promo code Shapiro, or you can even call them at 1-833-773-1146. That's 1-833-773-1146. Alrighty, so, meanwhile, the Democrats, for some odd reason, think that it's a great idea in the House to shove through Build Back Better. I do not understand the logic of this. It is absolutely illogical. I understand that Nancy Pelosi wants to demonstrate that she has some control over her caucus, but here's the problem. This bill's going nowhere. So it's going to get to the Senate, and Manchin and Sinema are not going to vote for this thing. They're not going to vote for this thing because it's a disaster area. The CBO has already said that it adds almost $400 billion to the deficit, and that's using the crappy Democratic math that says that the bill is only like $2 trillion. It is not a $2 trillion bill. It is a $5 trillion bill. And it's being pushed through by a president with a 36% approval rating, according to the latest polls. Joe Biden's approval rating is now lower than the approval rating for toe fungus. I mean, no one likes this guy. I mean, Let's Go Brandon started off as a coded chant for how bad Joe Biden is, and now people are beginning to be, I think, embarrassed of saying Let's Go Brandon on the off chance that somebody might think they actually are rooting for Biden. Like, Joe Biden has lower approval ratings than Trump, okay? So for all the talk about how unpopular and terrible Trump was, Joe Biden is making Donald Trump look like George Washington in terms of approval rating.
Disregard.
And there's a reason for that. It's because he's not even with it anymore. Here is Joe Biden signing his infrastructure bill, or another bill. And I don't know which bill it was, frankly, because he forgot the name of the bill. So I have no idea what the hell bill he's signing right here.
Yeah.
What was that, Joe? Can you repeat that? Because that wasn't in English. Once more.
Okay.
I just hope that he's not, I hope that he's not signing somebody else's name to that bill. Maybe I do. Maybe it'd be like a pocket veto if he accidentally signs somebody else's name to the bill. If he signs Corn Pop's name to the bill. Okay, so this guy's no longer with us. And yet Democrats rammed this thing through anyway. They did. So what exactly is in this monstrosity of a bill? Well, first of all, it creates the highest personal income tax rate in the developed world. It creates the highest capital gains tax rate since the 1970s. It creates a situation in which 8 states pay a combined federal-state tax rate of over 60%. It creates 87,000 new IRS auditors and agents, which is fun. Do you love the IRS? Because this place, they just dedicated $80 billion to increasing the size and scope of the IRS. Sounds like fun. Looking forward to it? Yeah, it's gonna be great. 50% increase in small business audits. 1.2 million more annual IRS audits. About half hitting households making less than $75,000 a year. This is according to Americans for Tax Reform. There's an $8 billion home heating tax. There's a $1.6 billion special tax handout for media companies, which is, by the way, a clear First Amendment violation. The federal government is not supposed to be in the business of deciding which companies qualify as local media companies for purpose of giving them a subsidy. That is a clear violation of the First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Because once the government is subsidizing particular outlets and calling the media outlets so it can give them money and not others, that is rife for ideological discrimination. It also does hike taxes on the middle class. So the most hilarious thing about this bill is that after Joe Biden claimed that it would increase the taxes on the millionaires and the billionaires, and that it would not increase taxes on the middle class, it actually gave a tax break to millionaires and billionaires in the blue states, because it increases the SALT tax deduction. Okay, so state and local tax deductions, the way that it worked under Trump is that he got rid of those. So the rule was, before Trump, that if you lived in California and you paid a 13% state income tax, you could take that tax off the top of your income, and then on the lower line income, you would pay your federal tax. Trump came in, he passed the tax cuts. The tax cuts got rid of that provision. So now, whatever your top line income was, say it was $1 million, now you're paying 13% for the California tax, and then you were also paying 37% for the federal tax. For Biden, it was you paid the 13%, which took your number down to $870,000, and then you paid the federal tax on the $870,000. That's what Biden is trying to do. He's basically giving a tax break to all of his friends in blue states. And the White House knows this, by the way. And here's Jen Psaki admitting it.
Back to work. Would the current provisions stand for these state and local tax deductions, given it would be a pretty significant tax break for the wealthy?
Well, let me start by first, obviously wasn't what he proposed in his initial package, as you know, but just to come back to that. The president also, though, it's been conveyed to him by leaders in the House and Senate that this needs to be included in order for this legislation to move forward. And he certainly understands that.
I mean, it's unreal. It's unreal. So he promised no raising taxes on people who are middle class, and yes, raising taxes on the rich. According to Tim Carney, most millionaires would receive a tax cut from the Democrats' Build Back Better bill. Many middle-class taxpayers would see a tax increase. Phil Klein at National Review spells it out, citing a Tax Policy Center study, which concludes roughly 20 to 30% of middle-income households would pay more in taxes in 2022. Plus, according to the Center for a Responsible Federal Budget, a household making $1 million per year will receive 10 times as much from SALT cap relief as a middle-class family will receive from the child tax credit expansion. So I guess that now AOC, the 2024 presidential candidate, is going to have to wear a dress to the Democratic Party caucus saying, tax the rich. Or maybe her dress should just say, because she did, I voted for a bill that raised taxes on the middle class and also gave a tax cut to the rich. Welcome to the oligarchy, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. Here was Bernie Sanders saying this is bad policy.
I think it's bad politics.
Oh, no, drop headed your way.
The Democrats correctly have campaigned on the understanding that amidst massive wealth inequality, we've got to demand that the wealthy stop paying their fair share of taxes, not give them more tax breaks. The bottom line is we have to help the middle class, not the 1%.
Okay, so, yeah, this thing is DOA in the Senate. So what was the point of any of this? What's the point of it? By the way, the CBO, again, reported that this would raise the deficit by $367 billion. And then they said, well, maybe the IRS will claw back a bunch of money from people. So maybe it'll be like $160 billion, something like that. Okay, here's the reality. It's going to be trillions of dollars in deficits because the actual cost of this bill is not $1.85 trillion. The actual cost of this bill is $4.6 trillion, according to the Wall Street Journal. The Penn-Wharton budget model estimates the House bill would cost nearly $4.6 trillion over 10 years if temporary provisions are made permanent, as most will be. The Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget pegs that cost at $4.9 trillion if temporary tax credits and programs are made permanent through 2031. This would add not $367 billion, not $120 billion, $1.5 trillion to deficits over the next 5 years without additional tax offsets. Okay, so what exactly is in this budget? So they've enhanced child allowances, $3,600 for children under age 6, $3,000 up to age 17. This is the bill's most expensive provision at about $130 billion a year. That's why Democrats limit it to 1 year. Does anyone think this is going to be 1 year? Democrats are going to try and leverage this into law forever, and many Republicans will go along with it. The Earned Income Tax Credit expansion triples the maximum EITC value for childless adults, but only for 1 year. They say it'll only cost $15 billion. But if you extend it over a decade, which is what they want to do, it's $135 billion. And by the way, you can qualify based on your previous year's earnings. You don't actually have to work to get this particular tax credit. The new child care entitlement. Households making up to 250% of their state's median income would qualify for child care vouchers. Their payments would be capped at 7% of income, less for lower earners. The bill appropriates $100 billion through 2024 to states, and such sums as may be necessary from 2025 to 2027. And as you know, the spending is going to increase. Here's the thing. The price of daycare is going to go up, not down. The reason it's going to go up, not down, is because the same bill that subsidizes daycare for all of these folks also regulates who is allowed to receive money as a daycare provider. It creates all sorts of new restrictions on who gets to be a daycare provider. So it actually limits, it increases the demand and limits the supply, which leads to, wait for it, inflation. Their universal pre-K bill appropriates about $18 billion to states for universal pre-K through 2024, and then, quote-unquote, such sums as may be necessary through 2027. The pre-K and child care entitlements, according to the Wall Street Journal, are estimated to cost only $380 billion because they phase in gradually and expire after 6 years. But they're not going to expire in 2027. Once people get hooked, the government just keeps doing it, which means they cost $800 billion if made permanent. So all of this is just a joke, okay? Everybody, and it's not going anywhere in the Senate. And Nancy Pelosi, by the way, speaks about what's in this bill. Okay, she says that, yeah, sure. By the way, it allows taxpayer funding for abortion. Joe Manchin said that was a red line. He said he's not voting for a bill that allows taxpayer funding for abortion. They stuck it in there anyway. Nancy Pelosi knows full well. The entire Democratic Party caucus in the House knows full well this is going nowhere in the Senate. So all she just did is make all of her moderate members walk the plank. She's an idiot. I'm sorry, she's not that great at this. There's been all this talk about what a master negotiator Nancy Pelosi is. I'm wondering under what world that is true. Under what blue moon is that true? And Nancy Pelosi is great at this. All she did is create a raft of ads for Republican candidates against Democratic candidates in purple districts. That's all she did. Like Pramila Jayapal is happy today. She's not going to be happy when Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema kill the bill. But it is amazing. Here's Nancy Pelosi admitting it allows taxpayer funding for abortion.
Yes. The Helms and Hyde Amendment are still not in the reconciliation bill, but weeks ago, Chairman Jeffries said that anything is on the table. Is that still the position?
It's not in the bill. It's not in the bill. Thank you for your question. It's not in the bill.
Stand the bill. Thank you for your question. The Hyde Amendment, stand the bill. Right, which means it's DOA. And then this crazy lady, she says, spending on climate change. So there's a ton of spending on climate change, which is just a waste of money. Because most of the spending on climate change, all as far as I'm aware, is not directed towards, say, building new seawalls or shoring up infrastructure. It is all geared toward green energy boondoggles for political allies. It's all Cylindra writ large. Here's Nancy Pelosi, though. I love, you gotta love the religious principles of hardcore Democrats like Nancy Pelosi. She's such a wonderful Catholic, Nancy Pelosi, that she believes that abortion is a positive good, but spending on climate change is a religious issue.
It's a religious thing. I believe this is God's creation, and we have moral obligation to be good stewards. But if you don't share that view, you must share the view that we have an obligation to future generations. So we're going to play the black legacy, and it will pay for.
Okay, the kind of blasphemy that she speaks from the podium, you almost expect the sky to open up and just come down. Good luck with this. So, congratulations to the Democrats, I guess, for passing a bill that will go nowhere in the Senate and completely screws all the moderates in the Democratic. I don't even know how they convince the moderates to vote for this. Like, how do you convince the Josh Gottheimers of the world this is a good idea? I guess they just don't want to take crap from the Democratic primary. They don't want to take crap from the Democratic Party. They're afraid they won't be able to get a job with their friends after their